Hey, what's up guys? I'm DJ Alex Brown, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my experience with QuickBooks Self-Employed, the app on the phone, as well as the desktop version. This is really not going to be just a QuickBooks Self-Employed video. I'm going to talk about kind of QuickBooks in general, but without further ado, let's just get into it. So as with any review type video, I usually start with talking about price and features, but a lot of that is going to come up throughout the video. I'll start here first with price of QuickBooks Self-Employed versus QuickBooks Online. I use QuickBooks Self-Employed, but after starting to use it, I quickly kind of regretted going with QuickBooks Self-Employed because QuickBooks Online is a little bit more scalable. And with having multiple brands and multiple sources of income, so in my case, I have Schedule C income, which is from my DJ and letter rental, and then I also have Schedule E income, rental property. So that is totally different. I would need to have a separate QuickBooks account for that, kind of just making do with self-employed until, you know, I need to make the jump to online, because I would need to export all of my data, which is kind of a major downside. QuickBooks Online is a little bit more expensive. There are a couple more features included, but the main thing is that you can start with the basic QuickBooks Online and then step up to like the next tier. It's just a lot more scalable. If you have a look at their packages and pricing on their website for QuickBooks, you'll see this pretty obviously, but what they really don't make obvious is that QuickBooks Self-Employed is not scalable like at all. You can still export your data, but you can't just, you know, upgrade it to, say, a QuickBooks Online account. As far as pricing, I think right now I'm paying like $7.50 a month, which is a promo for 3 months, and then it'll be $15 a month after that for self-employed. QuickBooks Online is $30 a month, but you know, you get 50% off for 3 months or something along those lines. Now, the reason I started using QuickBooks Self-Employed is because I was having trouble keeping track of all my business expenses and mileage with just how busy I am with my DJ events, my letter rentals, and trying to scale a business at the same time. You know, I frequently work 7 days a week, 10-hour days of office work at my computer and, 18-hour days of doing double events. So my goal with using QuickBooks Self-Employed was to save time, manually entering my expenses and manually tracking my mileage. It's so tedious tracking mileage. If you do a lot of driving for your business, then you'll probably know how tedious it is to keep track of all your mileage. One thing that I really like about QuickBooks Self-Employed is the mileage tracking feature. And we'll get to expense tracking later because the mileage tracking had the biggest impact on the amount of time saved. Because when I get into my car, I don't have to worry about, hitting the trip or writing down what the odometer reading is at the time that I get in to drive somewhere. I just get in, drive, and my phone tracks the mileage. There are a couple of nuances to this. Personally, I use an iPhone. Apple does not like when apps track you all of the time, but for QuickBooks to work properly to track your mileage, it needs to be tracking where you are all the time. Apple will constantly ask you when you first set this up, are you sure you want to allow this app to always track you? Because obviously they think that the app is, tracking you, sell you things, whatever. And that's not the case. I personally found that the first couple trips that I made, I had to open the app to make sure that it was recording that trip. And then I went in, I shut my location off for QuickBooks, went back in, turned it on, gave it full permissions again, and since then it has worked almost perfectly. So if you use an iPhone and you're planning on using QuickBooks Self-Employed, you might want to just make sure you have your settings right off the bat. Worst case scenario, it is super, super easy to go in and add a trip. For example, I can put in my home address, which is also my office, so where I'm always leaving from. And I can also search a street address. I can search a venue in the case of, if I'm headed to a wedding, it's 2 days later and I just say, oh, it didn't track the trip to the guild, so I'll just enter the mileage, I'll do it. But I don't have to worry about odometer readings. I can just go in, type in, here's when I left the house, here's the location I left from, here's the location I went to. You can save locations, but since I'm at different locations every weekend, I don't find that to be very helpful in my particular use case. If you're making consistent deliveries to singular clients, then that might be helpful to you. But I've also found that it's not always the best at determining where your final location is, and that's probably just because it's using GPS to track. For example, my house is 222 Waterman Ave, and sometimes it'll say I'm leaving from 218 Waterman Ave. What I also wanted to say was another great feature of QuickBooks is that it can use some, I'll say, software intelligence to determine which deductions you should be taking at the end of the year. And of course, as you'd expect, you can use TurboTax, which is, QuickBooks is an Intuit software, so is TurboTax. You can use TurboTax at the end of the year straight out of your QuickBooks subscription, and you also get a discount on it. Personally, I use an accountant. My taxes are way too complex for TurboTax. They also will automatically say, as long as you track all your expenses, mileage, car and truck expenses correctly, they'll automatically say, hey, for this vehicle, you should take the standard mileage deduction. That's it. That's going to be most beneficial. And for this one, you should take the actual deduction, which, can you total it up at the end of the year? Sure. But it's just one thing that it makes it a little bit easier. And honestly, it's something that's very simple that a software should be able to calculate. So I'm pleased that they do that. Also, part of the reason that I chose QuickBooks over another mileage tracking app was because in my research online, it said that it would use the smallest amount of data and the smallest amount of battery to do the auto tracking of mileage out of the apps that a couple of websites had compared. In the case of my QuickBooks Self-Employed, I have seen no change at all in the battery life since starting to use the app. I still can get through more than a day on a single charge of my battery. And I'm pulling up my data right now. It's used under 100 megabytes of data in around a month, which is plenty small enough for me. That's probably some portion mileage tracking and some portion me being on the road somewhere, just having a little bit of free time to swipe on my expenses, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now, I do have a couple of wish list things with the mileage tracking, and some of these things are really nuanced, probably nuanced to me because I'm a DJ and because I'm a small but trying to grow and scale business. One thing is a mileage tracking box that you can plug into your car. I don't know how this would work. I've never used one before, but I know they exist. I don't know what data those can pull. I don't know if it can pull odometer. I don't know if it just pulls power. But it would be nice in the case of having two vehicles for me to be able to have a tracker in each vehicle, because sometimes I do have people take my commercially registered truck to go do an event for me. Then I have to either myself go in and manually put those miles in. The technology exists to be able to auto track that vehicle individually. Personally, I wouldn't care about paying $100 for a little box that plugs in, but some people might, but it'd just be nice to have as an option. In my case, I have two business vehicles, which is fine. For QuickBooks, you can set up that you have two different vehicles and you can just set a default. I did have to play around with that a little bit because I thought I would be driving the business truck a lot more than my car, but it turns out I actually drive my car a lot more. I also personally find that it would be probably easier to just force you to select a vehicle each time you swipe on a trip, because I find that I bounce back and forth between vehicles so often that it would probably be easier to just have it pop up and say, okay, which vehicle did you drive? The other thing, and again, I haven't used QuickBooks Online, so I don't know how this transfers over, but on the phone app, when you go to categorize your expenses, there are sometimes different nuances of features that aren't really available on the phone app. For example, QuickBooks can track your expenses by vehicle. So I can swipe on, say I got oil at O'Reilly Auto Parts. I'll swipe its business expense, its car truck expense. And QuickBooks already has categories auto-populated, which is super nice. And if I charge something on my credit card that's at an auto parts store, the default will be that it's auto repairs, which is super, super nice. That has made my life so much easier than sitting in DJ Event Planner, which is what I was using before, and typing in, here's what it was for, here's what card I used, and all that crap. Problem is on the phone, there's no way to say this was for this vehicle and this was for that vehicle. When you log on to the desktop app, you go through and it'll say, oh, you have 3 transactions to categorize to a vehicle, which is nice because it just holds them until you've categorized them to a vehicle, which is kind of what I wish it would do with the mileage tracking, what I was mentioning earlier. There's really no reason that, at least in my mind, and again, I'm not an app developer, that you couldn't just put that into the mobile app to be able to swipe that over. Maybe I'm missing something. I've only been using this for about a month. But I feel like I've used just about every feature. And I have a lot of nitpicky things that are small adjustments, but using QuickBooks Self-Employed to track my mileage and do my expenses has saved me so much time. Initially, I thought I would use the, just auto snap a receipt or email the receipt to QuickBooks. I found that emailing the receipt is not really great because I have too many different emails, and as far as I've seen, you can only set up one email that you email receipts from. I have too many different emails that my receipts go to, so I just have my business bank account and my American Express business card hooked up to my QuickBooks. All the transactions go through there anyway, unless it's something paid with cash, which is fairly rare. But anyway, so I was planning on just taking a picture of the receipts straight in the QuickBooks app. I found that this was very tedious to do because it doesn't post a transaction until it's posted on your credit card. So if something is pending, it's going to sit in pending for 3 days. You can see it in QuickBooks, but you can't put the receipt on it. So I said, you know what, this is I don't want to wait around for it. It's a lot easier if I just take the receipt, save it to a Google Drive folder as I was doing before, and just name it properly so that I can find it if I need it. I do wish that QuickBooks would allow you to just save the receipt as soon as the transaction is posted. If the transaction changes, the receipt is going to tell me exactly what I paid for it anyway. So it really, not being able to, if I post the receipt right when it is pending, it shouldn't matter. And if the pending charge gets deleted or goes away or something, then the receipt just evaporates. And it gets deleted just like the charge. So I don't see why it won't allow you to do that. Not great, but what is great is to be able to connect to your bank account and your credit card and just have all your transactions auto-imported. Another huge thing is you can set rules. So, if I spend money at ProGobo, for example, if you're in the DJ industry, I'm sure you know what ProGobo is, but that's always supplies. It's always a business expense. And it's always from the same place, and I only buy one thing from that place. So I have a couple of rules set up that things auto expense, and then all I have to do, if it auto categorized it and everything, all I have to do is save that receipt into my Google Drive folder. Everything else is done. So that is super, super helpful. The technology is really great. Just to save that amount of time of doing the bookkeeping myself is just huge. It probably saves me a couple hours a week. I usually consider my time to be worth about $50 to $60 an hour. So, the cost of paying for QuickBooks, say $15 a month, I have my nitpicks, but the time savings for me is so massive that I'm going to continue using this 100%. I'm going to continue using it because it's saving me hundreds of dollars a month in terms of time, money. Now I'm going to interrupt the video for a minute here and say that unfortunately QuickBooks does not offer a referral link, at least from what I've been able to find. Usually in a video like this, like my open phone video, I would say, here's my referral link. You can help support the channel by using my referral link. For today's quote unquote sponsor, we're gonna say that that is OpenPhone because OpenPhone does have a referral program. I do have a video out on OpenPhone. If you wanna check it out over here, it's not quite as polished as this one, just a quick warning up front. And they have added some new features and changed the pricing a little bit, but I still think OpenPhone is absolutely awesome for running my business. I've added additional phone numbers as I've grown, and awesome. I've showed this to every business owner that says, oh, I want to get a separate phone for my business because I'm so sick of my cell phone ringing at all hours and, you know, having no separation between my work and my life. And I say, don't pay $80 a month for another cell phone and buy another cell phone. Pay like $20, maybe $30 a month, have two features that you wouldn't get from getting another business, you know, cell phone and cell phone plan from Verizon or something. You can have call recording, you can set business hours. I think this is better than having a separate business cell phone. But you can actually sign up for a free trial for 7 days and actually use the platform and give it a try. And if you decide you like it, you can continue. I think it's $17 a month now. I'm still on grandfathered in pricing. Looking at QuickBooks, OpenPhone is a great platform to go right along with it. If you sign up with the link that I'm gonna put in the description to OpenPhone, you will get $20 off if you decide to sign up for a paid subscription. Now, back to talking about QuickBooks. Putting in expenses manually, I very, very infrequently have to do. Really, like I said, because all of my transactions are either from my checking account, which is business only, or my business American Express card, I really don't have to put things in manually. But when I do, it's super easy. So there's two sort of issues that I have with QuickBooks. Now, I started using QuickBooks almost halfway through the calendar year. I'm a sole proprietor. I go from January 1st to December 31st every year. That's my business year. So I started using it on June 1st to give myself an easy date and, you know, to have a switch so I know where things are. The problem is if you import your American Express and bank account transactions, it will import them all the way to January 1st. Now you still have to swipe to categorize them. But some people might consider this to be helpful. Some people might consider it to be not so helpful. QuickBooks is trying to calculate, hey, here's what your self-employed tax is going to be. Here's, you know, what you should pay for estimated taxes. And to be honest, for me, those values are very, very far off from what they actually are. Now, one part of that is because, for example, QuickBooks understands you can put in, I paid $4,000 to the federal government in estimated taxes 2023 for quarter one, for quarter two, whatever. When you enter that as an expense, it knows you spent $4,000 to the IRS and it's going to take that off of what it thinks you owe as your estimated taxes. And they do ask you how you're set up when you're setting up the account. If you're sole proprietor, if you're LLC, taxed as an S Corp, anything like that, because that'll affect how much you owe in tax. So, you know, I don't know how well those calculations are on that side, but as a sole proprietor, I can tell you the tax numbers that it's calculating for me are way off. Like I think it says I owe $22,000 right now, which is way, way off for two reasons. It doesn't have the right expenses entered for it to calculate off of. So obviously that's a problem there. So I'm ignoring these numbers. But the second portion is, for example, I paid $10,000 for the box truck that I use for business. Plus, I paid the registration, the insurance, the taxes, all that stuff. The registration, taxes, insurance, that QuickBooks can figure out. But the $10,000, unless I take a Section 179, which my accountant probably is going to tell me not to do, that needs to be depreciated. But I don't put the $10,000 in because I know QuickBooks doesn't seem to be able to handle things that should be depreciated. Same thing for a big equipment purchase. If I spend $2,000 on a new set of speakers, that should be depreciated. these values are also off for that reason. Now, the third reason, and I don't think there's any way for QuickBooks really to fix this, is I have tax credits and tax loss deductions that come from other tax forms and other sides of tax stuff that move over to take my Schedule C income down for tax purposes and make it so I pay less taxes. So for example, last year I bought a house. I have a mortgage tax credit certificate that helps me pay less in federal and state taxes. This is stuff that I hand off to my accountant and I say, here's the document, figure it out. I don't know this stuff, you're the professional, figure it out. The other portion is because my house is a multi-family home and I have rental income, almost always I'm losing money on the house. But for tax purposes, I'm losing money. Taxes are a very complex thing. I think QuickBooks is over-promising and under-delivering a little bit on the estimated self-employment taxes, because I'm also going to mention as I wrap this video up that I do not actually track my income in QuickBooks. I could. Again, it's kind of a thing because I started halfway through the year. But in my case, because I do use DJ Event Planner to manage all of my incoming income, it's just easier that I use that. If you run a business and you need to save some time, QuickBooks is probably a good solution for you. If you are getting started with QuickBooks and you have a plan at any point in your future to be any more than just self-employed, which I think most business owners probably plan to grow at some point, just pay the extra couple bucks a month for the QuickBooks Online. Personally, it's a mistake I made doing self-employed. I would just do online. Features are mostly the same for mileage tracking and all that stuff, but there's just more you can do with it, and you can scale it up in the future as well. You can have multiple different businesses, which would be, again, a huge thing in my case for the real estate side of things. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was long-winded, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got some good information out of it, and that you're gonna work to optimize your business with technology as a result of watching this video. So if you enjoyed the video and want to see more content about business, please consider subscribing to my channel, checking out some of the recommended videos that are going to pop up in a second, and dropping a like on this video so that more people can find this and optimize their businesses with technology as well. That's going to be it for this one. Until next time, peace.